When does a man stop turning the other cheek? My wife came home just before midnight with her sleeve ripped at the shoulder and a split lip, gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing holding her up. She fell into me, and I could feel every muscle in her back shaking. She couldn't get a full sentence out. I walked her to the kitchen, sat her down, and pressed a cloth of cold water to her mouth while trying to keep my own hands from trembling, because I already sensed the shape of what had happened. Lena is the calmest person I've ever known. She runs the emergency intake at a city hospital. She's stitched up stabbing victims at 3 a.m. and talked down men twice her size without raising her voice. But sitting at our table, she looked hollowed out, folding into herself, apologizing over and over for ruining the night, which made no sense. I kept telling her she'd done nothing wrong. It had happened in the parking structure of a restaurant where she'd gone for a coworker's birthday. A man had followed her to her car. She said he was huge, reeked of liquor, and pinned her against the door before she could get her key in the lock. She fought, she screamed, but the level was empty and her colleagues were 2 floors up. He grabbed at her, tore her sleeve, and only backed off when another car's headlights swung around the ramp. The worst part came after. Lena found the valet stand and reported it, pointing out the man who was now laughing with friends by the entrance. The valet manager barely looked up. Didn't see anything, ma'am. No cameras down on that level. Then he lowered his voice and told her the guy was the restaurant owner's son, and maybe she'd had a few drinks and misread a friendly gesture, and she should just head home. When her co-workers wanted to call the police, a host warned them the whole party would be blacklisted from the owner's 3 restaurants for starting drama. A woman at the next table whispered that he'd done this before, that everyone knew, that nothing ever stuck. Lena works in a system that's supposed to protect people, and even she knew exactly how this would end. No footage, no witnesses willing to risk anything. A wealthy family with a name on 3 buildings. She'd spent her career caring for victims, and now she was one, and the machine just rolled over her. I held her while she cried, and I have never felt so useless in my life. I don't know powerful people. I had nothing that could reach that man. Then I thought of my uncle. My uncle spent 40 years as a longshoreman down at the docks, in a world I'd spent my whole adult life politely keeping my distance from. He knew men who solved problems the law wouldn't touch. The next morning, while Lena slept, I drove to his place. He was in his garage with his radio and his coffee, the same as always. I told him everything, and I watched his jaw harden in a way I'd never seen. He set his mug down so hard it cracked. "You have his name?" he asked, in a voice that didn't sound like him. I pulled up the restaurant's social media, where the son was tagged in photo after photo, flashing watches and bottles in the VIP corner. My uncle studied the screen like he was burning the face into memory. Then he made a few short calls right there in the garage. I only heard his half, names I didn't recognize, mentions of debts owed. When he hung up, he told me to go home and take care of my wife. He'd handle the rest. 4 days later, the local news reported that the restaurant owner's son had been found behind one of his father's properties, both hands shattered, jaw wired, unable to say who'd done it. No cameras, no witnesses, nothing to prosecute. But the real story was what investigators found when they searched his apartment after an anonymous tip. Phones full of videos he'd secretly filmed of women, items he'd kept as trophies. Evidence tied him to more than a dozen victims over several years. All 3 restaurants were shuttered within weeks as the case widened. The father was arrested for covering it up and paying off inspectors. 9 women came forward once they knew he couldn't reach them anymore. Lena wasn't one of them, but she read every update. My uncle never spoke about it directly. When I tried to thank him, he just gripped my shoulder and started talking about a fishing trip. But I noticed the fresh scrapes across his knuckles. Lena noticed too. She never asked. Some men, my uncle once told me, only understand one language, and he was fluent.